Seventh grade. We are in Numbers chapter 13 today, and this is probably one of the high points. I don't know high, I should probably say low points. One of the most important things in the life of Israel. So this chapter in chapter 13, we're going to see that they have actually made it to the promised land. It could have been over. All of it could have been finished. You could have saved 1,000 pages if they would have just trusted the Lord, and He got them all the way to the border. And He's going to send out spies to spy out the land, because remember, the Canaanites are still in the land. There's a number of nations still in the land that God has intended to judge and actually remove from their place. And in this case, He's going to use Israel to displace them. So they're going to have to fight for what they have. So they're going to go and they're going to get what God promised, but they're going to have to fight for it. There's a lesson, I guess. So in any case, they immediately come out. We only left in chapter 10 from Sinai, and already they're at chapter 13. They're at the borders of Canaan. So we're going to see that they're going to spy out the land for 40 days. And at the end of the 40 days, they're going to come back and give a report. There's going to be one man from each tribe, so there will be 12 spies, and the majority of them are going to come back with a mournful, lamenting, oh no, we can't do this. They're so big, there's giants there. We're like grasshoppers, we'll never be able to do it. Two of them, in minority, Caleb and Joshua, come back and they're like, we can do this, we can take it. God is with us. Okay? So I heard an old saying once that said that the faithful look at difficulties through God, but the unbelieving look at God through their difficulties. So God can't do it because their difficulties are too big. But someone who's trusting can look at those same things that are bad and something you wouldn't want in your life, but that God is big enough. And a trusting soul believes that God is willing to accept you, that He has come to you and you have trusted Him in Christ, and He is fine with getting you through the trouble. He's not going to remove them. He gives you the ability to jump over a wall, but He's not going to remove the wall. He gives you ability to run through an army, but He's not going to remove the opposing army. He's going to keep those problems there in your life, so you can just rest assured that they'll have them. But God can help you, and that's something that it does take. It takes experience. It takes someone trusting God over and over again to realize that that is actually the truth. Everyone else doubts it. Nobody. All the pseudo Christians, all the kind of Christians, all the whatevers, they're not going to trust God when things get bad. They're instantly going to run. Okay, so we're going to see that here. This chapter doesn't make full sense until we get to chapter 14 when Israel reacts to the spies. So tomorrow's class we'll be able to see that a little bit better, but we'll just do 13 today. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Send thou men, that thou mightst search the land of Canaan, which I will give to the children of Israel. Of every tribe of their father shall you send a man, every one a ruler among them. And so they are not just anybody. These are rulers. These are people that should have known better, should have trusted God. These are the ones who have seen God work. But your heart is what determines whether you trust or not. It's not necessarily your education. There's many wicked people with a Christian education, I'm sure. And there are people who have not had access to a Christian education who are living godly lives. So it's not what's happened to you, it's what's on the inside that makes you who you are. So this is 3. And Moses, by commandment of the Lord, sent them from the wilderness of Paran. All those men were heads of the children of Israel. And then they give the names. Okay, so here's all the tribes, and there's the guys, Bob and Frank, and they all are coming, and they're going to go into the land. Okay. These are the names of the men which Moses sent out to spy. Okay. You do remember 2 of these guys. The ones that came back with the minority report, the ones who said, we can do this, God is with us, is Caleb. Caleb is going to enter the land as an 80-year-old man. okay? Because he was 40 when he went to spy the land, and he said we can do it, and he doesn't die. He gets to go into the land, and he fights with a sword for the mountain that he wants. He gets first pick of every place in the country to live. He wants the place where they spied out, which I think is just awesome. And then Joshua is Moses' assistant, and he will eventually be the leader of the people after Moses dies. Okay. So, verse 17, and Moses sent them out to spy the land of Canaan, and said to them, get you up this way southward, and go up into the mountain, and see what the land, what it is, and the people that dwell therein, and whether they strong or weak, few or many. And what the land is they dwell in, and whether it's good or bad, and what cities they be that dwell in, whether in tents or in strongholds, and what the land is, whether it be fat or lean, whether there be wood therein or not, and be of good courage, and bring the fruit of the land. Now this was the time for the first fruit of grapes. Okay, so you've got grapes, wild grapes are growing, you've got farms, you've got cities, you've got fortified cities. They're going to go in and realize that the ancestors of Goliath still live in the land, that there are Anakim in the southern part there, which are enormous men, and they're like, goodness, we can't do this. We'll see. They ascended to the south and came to Hebron, where Ahiman and Shishai and Talmai, the children of Anak, were. Now, the Anakim were the giants. Now, Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. And they came into the brook of Eshcol, and cut down from there a branch with one cluster of grapes, and they bare it between two on a staff, and they brought out the pomegranates and the figs. So it grew grapes, wild grapes, that one cluster of grapes. So if you go to Kroger or you go to Walmart and buy a bag of grapes, it's normally one cluster, one ramus of grapes. You got a stem, and then all the grapes are hanging from that stem, and that's in a 2-pound bag, okay? Well, this one cluster of grapes that they found had to be put on a staff, and 2 men had to carry it, one on the front and one on the back, because it was so heavy. That gave you an idea of just how abundant that the land was, how fruitful it was. God was giving them not a desert place like they were wandering around in. They were in the desert wondering where water was coming from, griping that they didn't have any bread and didn't have any meat. And they're going to go into a place that is so productive that you had to have 2 men to carry grapes. So just it gives you an idea. And the place was called the brook Eshcol because of the cluster of grapes with the children of Israel cut down from thence. And they returned from searching the land 40 days. Now it's important that you remember 40 days, because later when Israel does not trust the minority but goes with the majority, also there's your lesson. The majority is not always right. Just because the majority of people think something is the way it should be doesn't mean it's right. You always go to what God has said, and that is right. And it doesn't matter if 99% go one way. If God asks you to go the other, you go the other. It's just the way it works. You trust the Lord. And so 40 days they search out the land, and when they are unbelieving and will not go in, God goes, fine. For every day a year, for every day that you searched out the land, you are going to wander around in the wilderness for a year, until every one of you dies by natural causes. I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to let death take its natural toll. And when all of you are gone, I'll take your children and we'll go into the promised land. You won't. Okay? You'll be buried out here in the desert. But it's strange. The idea that these people are wandering around in a place just on the other side of the hill that's super abundant, and they realize it is. They just realize that they have enemies there, and they're afraid of them. Okay, 26. And they went and came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness of Paran to Kadesh. So Kadesh Barnea is another Hebrew word. That is the border. Okay, Kadesh Barnea is the border to the promised land. Anything further on, and you are in Canaan. And so That is Kadesh. So Kadesh is going to be that painful spot in the life of Israel where they did not believe, they didn't trust, and their lack of faith cost them. Okay? In fact, the book of Hebrews makes a warning against these people who, because they had no faith, could not go into where God promised them. And they ended up dying and did not get what God had promised them. They prevented themselves from enjoying what God would have given them freely, and because they died without faith. Okay, so it's a serious rebuke, and this is us. This is me. This is you. Your faith, there will always be giants. There will always be problems in your life, and your faith is in God. Your faith is in God. Your faith is not in your ability. Your faith is not in your cleanness of hands, your mind, or your ability to your wits. It's not. It is your humble following God, asking for His blessing, and seeking to please Him in who He is in that relationship, and then relying that He's good enough and big enough to get you wherever He's promised you to go. So we're at 26. And then they went and came to Moses, and they showed him the fruit of the land. They showed him this big cluster of grapes. And they told him and said, "We came back from the land whither thou sentest, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it." Now, milk and honey is a idiom. It's a phrase. I don't know if it's flowing with milk, if rivers of milk. It just means that everything that you would want, everything that you would need, the sustenance and the sweetness is there. Everything that you would want to say this is a wonderful place is there, except, okay, nevertheless, okay, that's the except. The people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. So there are not just normal men, but there is also giant men there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and by the coast of Jordan. So remember, there's multi nations there. There's a number of nations, these Canaanite nations. So Hivites and Jebusites and Perizzites and Hivites and those, all of the ites, they're going to have to fight them. Okay, Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, "Let's go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it." Okay, it's not that he was able to see in themselves what the others couldn't see. He simply knew that God promised this. He saw what God had done. He went through the ocean like everybody else. He trusted Him. It's something inside. It's not something outside. Do you trust God? Are you trusting Him? It's whether you're alive or you're dead, and you get to make an assessment. Is that true of me? Do I see God as for me because of my Savior? Do I? Am I willing to follow Him on His terms, not mine? He's not my genie. He's not the guy that helps me out. He is God, and I follow God. Okay, God is not there for me, I'm there for Him, but He is willing to show me great grace. So Caleb is faithful. That's why people still name their kids Caleb. Okay, look at these other guys. Remember up here? Does anybody name their son Eagle and Palti and Gadiel? No. But do you know any Calebs at your school? Yeah, you do. Why? Because people are like, you've got a little baby, and you're saying, I want him to identify with someone who trusted God, who is known to be trusted of God. I want this baby to be the same. I want his friends to go, this man trusts the Lord. All right? So I'm sorry that you don't have a friend named Shether. Okay? Why? These guys, they never made it. They were strong. They were leaders. They were leaders of their own tribes. They were great men. Okay? They didn't trust the Lord, even though they were God's people. Interesting. So we're to 28. or I'm sorry, 31. But the men went up with him and said, "We'll not be able to go up against the people, for they're stronger than us." Okay, so now there's a dispute. You have Caleb saying one thing, you have the 10 saying the other thing, and they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, "The land, though we have gone to search it, is a land that eats up the inhabitants, and all the people that we saw were men of great stature." Okay, they're spooking them, they're scaring them. Okay, they're freaking them out. Why would they do that? See, your faith can be contagious to other people, and your lack of faith can equally be contagious to other people. Other people can latch on to your faith, and you can pull them with you along with your faith. Okay, many of you are still sitting on the faith of your grandparents or your parents or someone else. Others are already living in such a way that others are being drawn to the Lord because of you. Okay, I pray that's true of all of us. And 33, and they saw the giants, the son of Anak, which come of the giants, and they were in our sight as grasshoppers, so we were in their sight. We were like grasshoppers to these guys. They're huge. Okay, we could never conquer them. Let's quit. And everybody, you're going to see in verse 14. Well, look at 14:1, you can see it. And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept. It was over. They couldn't do it. Lose, end of game over. Okay. They don't realize that what God has said will happen. And if God has said, "I will be kind to you," then that will happen. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. And it doesn't matter. It does not matter what it looks like. Game is not over. Okay, when God says, "I'm going to get you all the way," He's going to get you all the way. It does not matter that there might be a storm in the middle of the lake. Okay, I'm just remembering a story where Jesus said, "Let's go over to the other side." Okay, and he fell asleep in the bottom of the boat, and all the storm came up, and they were sinking, and they wake Jesus up. Do you not care that we're about to die? And Jesus said, "Why would you even worry about this?" I don't know if you remember, but I just said, "Let's go to the other side." If I say, "Let's get to the other side," we're going to go to the other side. It doesn't matter that there's a storm. Okay? That's something that Jesus has to teach. And it's something that he's to teach each of us. And I'm really sorry, but it is from experience. You will have to go through these, and then on the other side realize, oh my goodness, it is true. Don't trust the 10. You trust the 2 when it concerns God's reputation. God will hold his own. Okay? All right, so more weeping in chapter 14. I hope you're having a great day. I miss you all very much.